Hello guys and welcome for another New World video. It's been a while since my last build video, but don't worry because I'm still here. We all know that the current state of the game is not the one that we want it to be. Changes and content are still to be expected, and the shadows around the so-called big announcement in June are still hiding what is yet to come. However, as you all know, I'm still playing the game and I'm trying to challenge myself with different stuff in-game in order to not lose interest. Lately, I decided to go back to one of my favorite builds for Fire and Ice Mage. I was using this one back in Season 2 and Season 3 under the name Critical Build. Now for the old version of the build, there are still the videos out there explaining in detail every small thing, but of course, as we all know, a lot of time passed already. This means that a lot of the perks which I used back then will not be the same, as now there are better replacements, especially with the newly added artifacts in the following seasons of 4 and 5. So without further ado, let's just go over the build and see what are the benefits from it and in which situations it would provide you the most value. Starting off with the weapons, there are two variations that I like to use. For both of them I use the flint stick as the main character of the build, with the small difference of last perk. As we all know, flint stick comes always with vicious and alacritus punishment, and this is what makes it so special. Those two perks cannot be placed on the same weapon if we aim to craft it, and this is the reason why it is considered the best fire staff out there. I usually use one with flame attunement and of course one with plague crits. Depending on your targets, you can choose between the two, but I personally prefer to go with the attunement. For the ice gauntlet, it might sound as a surprise, but we are not going to use the most favorite deep freeze artifact. Instead, we are taking a normal ice gauntlet with the perks for pylon, keen, and again we have two different variations, same as the fire staff. Personally, I'm opting for keenly jacked or plague crits, but going for attunement will also give you a good burst of damage. Keep in mind that your ice gauntlet is just a tool for support, and aiming to get higher damage on it will never be beneficial, as you will lose the potential of your fire staff. That's why we are also aiming at the pylon, as it will be there regardless of your current weapon in hand. The gems that I use for both weapons are quite simple. As for my ice gauntlet, I always go with Runglast Opal with elemental damage effect on it, different from the one that I'm using on the fire staff. For the fire staff, I use Ignited Opal or Ignited Emerald, depending on the situation. I know that most of you know it, but still I have to say it. If you use two same type of elemental rune glasses, the effects for the rune glass will not stack, so please avoid that. Taking a quick look over the skill trees, starting with the one for the fire staff, you will see a commonly used one with Pillar of Fire, Fireball and Burnout. Also, the distribution of passives is pretty much the same all over the board compared to other fire staff builds. One change that you might choose to do is to replace Heat Up with Let It Burn. However, I'm not a fan of building Fortify on lightly geared mage, so that's why I'm avoiding it. For Ice Gauntlet, it's also quite easy to remember, as you need all the available skills on the right side with the exception of one passive, which is called Frozen Touch. On the place of it, we will use the one remaining point for critical rejuvenation in order to have better mana management whenever we crit an enemy target. For the armor is quite easy and also kind of known by now what is considered to be extremely powerful. Using the Nature's Wrath as an artifact will provide you with a lot of damage potential and will secure a lot of pressure over the enemy's HP bars. This of course comes with a price, and usually it is concerning our defense and sustain. Hence, using good defensive perks is the key for this build to work well. Your main goal should be to get 5 enchanted ward perks on all your gear pieces, as this will protect you from all types of basic and heavy attacks from the enemies. It would not matter if they are coming from a melee user or a ranged person. Elemental Aversion is also a good option and a bit cheaper variation if you don't have enough coin. The second most important perk, which you also want to have 5 times, is the Fire Harnessing. As we said, Nature's Wrath combined with Pylon build on the Ice Gauntlet is the perfect reason for you to stay on your Fire Staff for the most part. Also, we all know at this point how much more this artifact gives us. And last but not least, you have to choose for yourself about the last remaining 4 perks. I'm mentioning only 4 remaining perks because of course your artifact is already coming with 2 locked ones, and if you put the harnessing it would be the third. The possible variations for perks which you can use are many, including all the skill perks such as Fireball, Pillar, Deadly Frost and Entomb. In my honest opinion, none of them is worth taking at the current state. Instead, I prefer to take conditioning perks with Slash or Thrust conditioning for all the remaining pieces. The reason for taking either Slash or Thrust conditioning over the mentioned 4 weapon perks is quite simple. This combination of fire and ice is meant to be used in small skirmishes such as arenas and OPRs. Even if you decide to play the build in wars, it should always be used mainly for dex fights which take place on the side where the scale is mostly 5v5 or 10v10. Due to that reason, you would not find much value in the Pillar of Fire perk, for example, as the 1 second cooldown at a target hit would not give you more compared to the 5% damage mitigation from a physical type of damage. Same can be said about the Fireball, as in small skirmishes this ability is easily visible and avoidable. The Ice Gauntlet perks are technically under the same comparison. Deadly Frost will give you cooldown on the ability and small damage dot over the enemies in it, but it will not even be close to be compared with the 5% damage mitigation from the conditional perk. And last but not least, of course, Entomb can provide you a small HP return after being used, but of course you don't have that all the time. So with that in mind, I highly suggest you to skip all the weapon perks and use instead Slash or Thrust conditioning perks on the remaining 4 slots on your armor. There is a small trick which you can use by placing just one type of conditioning and then use the other one for your amulet. For example, you can go with 4 conditioning Thrust and then using the Slash protection on your amulet, or vice versa. Speaking of amulet, let's just take a look over the jewelries for the build. Not long ago I decided to drop the health perk from my necklace so I can see if there is a noticeable difference. Well, there is no such difference. That's the reason why I'm not running any more health on my amulet, but instead I'm going for a type of protection, stamina recovery and refreshing. If you still believe that the health perk will give you a lot of value, you can always go for it. For a ring, there is not much of an option, as we are almost forced to go with hearty, fire damage and refreshing. You might ask, why not invigorated? Well, because I personally believe that this perk doesn't really work that well, as the last time I tested it, it was not even working, but even if it does, you will never be able to achieve high percentages, as you would not be able to proc 10 buffs on the enemies. For earrings, some people might prefer to play with Endless Thirst, but I don't think that this is a good combination with the Nature's Wrath. The reason for it is the 2 perks which the earring already has, the first one being the Empowering Toast, which technically will not work due to the passive of the Nature's Wrath. The second one is the Fortifying Toast, which, like I said, in light gear Fortified doesn't have that much value. This leaves us with already 2 not that good perks, and we are not really looking at a good earring. Instead, I'm going for a normal earring with Refreshing Toast, Refreshing, and for last perk I go with either Nimble or Regenerating for wars, and then if I want to play OPRs and arenas, I can go also with Purifying Toast. Gems are the next important part of the build, but it's also one of the easiest ones to explain. As we are heavily stacked on Enchanted Ward and physical conditionings, plus the protection from our amulet for physical damage, The only reasonable way to proceed from here is to go with full opals on all our pieces. Of course, on your gear you want to have a rune glass of ignited opals, as they will give you the much needed 10% of empower for fire damage, and sometimes on your jewelry you can also change one of the opals to a specific element in case you expect the enemy to heavily invest in this type of damage. For example, if you know that the enemy has a lot of bolt casters or a lot of fire mages, you can change the one opal to a topaz or a ruby. For Hearthrune of the build, again you have few different variations and good choices. Cannon, in my opinion, is definitely the one that I always go for, as you have much more damage potential to execute people not only far but also close to you. In other good choices could be Stoneform, Biobomb, or even in some cases Vines. For attributes of the build, I always go for the same split using 150 Constitution, 25 Dexterity, and everything that remains goes into Intelligence. In case you feel really vulnerable with 150 Constitution, I suggest you to not go to 200 of that attribute, but instead to watch your deaths on replay if possible. This way you will find out why actually you died, and you will really fast find the reason how to sort this out. This will also help you improve your gameplay, and in the future fights you would know where to stand in the different scenarios. And with that guys, I think we summarized the build with the fire and ice using the ice pylon. As always, I want to thank you for supporting me even in those hard times for New World. I also want to share with you that the stream, which is going from Wednesday to Sunday, is now live on 3 different platforms, and you can not only watch it on Kick, but of course you can join from Twitch or YouTube if you want to. I hope you guys enjoyed the build, and I wish you fun times in New World. Thank you once again, and I will see you on the next one.